Hello, everybody, and welcome to the C2C podcast. I'm Jeremiah Nicholson, and today I'm joined by Zoe Layton, and we're going to talk a little bit about community organizing.
Hello.
So just to get things started, I wanted to ask, how did you first become involved in community organizing?
So I first became involved in community organizing in college. It was actually my first year of college. I got involved with a group called Campus Action for Democracy, and it was right after the 2018 midterms was when I got involved. So I was kind of halfway through the year, but I had seen people out canvassing, doing surveys of people on campus, asking what issues were most important and relating that to the local elections that were going on and trying to build kind of this base of community power on campus, and started going to those meetings and ended up being co-president of that organization for about a year, where we designed a campaign around healthcare equity on campus. So trying to make sure that people who were on public assistance, who were on Medicaid with the state, were able to access healthcare on campus and weren't isolated from the care that they needed.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. And going off of that, I wanted to talk about some things you learned specifically. Do you have any core principles for building community relationships?
Yes. So I think the first thing that I learned, and the thing that I think the most about still, is that relationships aren't transactional. So I think, for example, if I'm building a community relationship, even if I'm working on an individual level with someone, it's not transactional. And I wouldn't say that whatever work we're doing isn't for that person. It is, I'm in relationship with someone. So it's not it's together. So we're in relationship together because we both know that we're going to benefit from that relationship, because when we're building community relationships, we're strengthening the community and we're creating something sustainable that's going to benefit everyone, that's going to make it a better quality of life for everyone involved. So it's not transactional, it's mutually beneficial. And we know that when one person is empowered, that ripples throughout the community and makes us all better.
Awesome. Exactly. And yeah, I think at the end you touched there, community can mean a lot of different things. And obviously you can be, or maybe not obviously, you can be a part of multiple communities at a time. There's your family, your friends, your neighborhood, your religion, hobbies, interests, a whole wide spectrum of things. And the ripple effect that you talked about, I think, is really key. Teach somebody to give someone a fish and they're fed for a day. Teach somebody to fish,
Yeah.
and they can replicate that positive effect in all the social circles that they're in.
Yeah, that's definitely something. One of the core principles too. It's snowflake model. So it's like you each have these individual networks, like you were saying. Everyone has networks that they don't always think about as part of that broader community. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think we can get isolated in our little bubbles, like just this is my church community and it's separate from my work community, it's separate. When in reality, it's all connected. We're all interconnected, and that's the point of building those relationships, and why it's not transactional is because when we bring all those things together, we're more powerful, we have the support we need. And it makes us all better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk about some common obstacles to community building and methods you have to address them.
Yeah, so I think about this, and I think one of the biggest things that I consistently have run into is there's honestly a stigma most of the time. There's a stigma that a lot of people have around reaching out for community support. I think sometimes there's this sense of shame that people have on an individual level, that if they're not able to reach their goals by themselves, they're not able to accomplish what they want to accomplish entirely on their own and separate from that community, that in some way they have failed, or that needing to reach out for help is a personal failure, an individual failure, rather than the idea that a lot of people don't have the idea that connecting their community to their personal goals, that reaching out for that community support actually makes them stronger. So I think that stigma and shame is one of the big things that when I'm building a relationship with people, I really want to work through that with them. I want to try to unpack why they feel that way, what struggles they run into personally, and then connect that to how really being in a broader community will help them and is the opposite of a failing.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, especially in America, we have a very individualistic culture. And, humans are not individual creatures. We're social creatures. We're social animals, and we're meant to operate as a group. And that's what makes us strong. That's why we're at the top of the food chain on the earth, our ability to work so well as a unit as opposed to just an individual. So kind of touching on that, could you talk a little bit about, and I think we spoke about this earlier, give somebody a fish and they're fed for a day, teach somebody to fish, but the importance of empowerment over, say, like direct material aid, because obviously there are some situations where somebody needs help and they need it now. They need food, they need shelter, and that's all well and good. Everybody, I think, should try their hardest to make sure that nobody's hungry or out in the streets. But empowerment, in the way we've talked about, I think kind of comes in differently. Yeah.
So I think the big thing is that long-term power and sustainability piece of it. So of course, everyone needs those direct, immediate needs met. But I think when we talk about building community, we talk about building relationships. It's expanding the scope of that. Because just doing that direct aid on that individual level, like we were talking about, especially in the U.S., we do, I think, have this very strong sense of individualism, and that you have to go it alone, that it makes you weaker to reach out for a community. So I think it's about going beyond the individual and bringing that collective together. And again, like I was talking about, it ripples out. So empowerment, having community empowerment makes a sustainable community, if that makes sense. So having a collective sense of responsibility and agency over your own life, over your own community is what's really essential, because then in the long term, if there's a community need, because often the problems you face as an individual are not unique to you. You're not alone in that. It can feel like you are, and it can feel isolating, and that's completely valid. But when you realize that you're not alone in that, it gives you a sense of agency again. Because you don't have to struggle alone, and you can build that community. So in the future, when needs come up, you reach out to your community. They'll often say, I'm facing the exact same thing. And you can work together for longer term solutions. You can build that power. You can go to the people who have the power to maybe make that change. And if you're together in that, then you're going to be able to make that long term change that's needed.
That's definitely something to take to heart. Absolutely. All right, I always say at the end of the episodes, I wish we had more time, but for now, I'll say thank you, Zoe, so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the C2C podcast, out almost every Friday.